Welcome back to this YMCA Heritage series that hopefully you've been following. If not, the links for the other great interviews are down below in the description. I'm joined by Emma today, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation around her journey in the YMCA. And she's just coming up to the end of her term as president, and we'll talk a little bit about that and some of the things that she's done during her time and a little bit about the future. So pause it, grab yourself a coffee, grab yourself a drink, and come and listen to myself and Emma with the beautiful surname that I can't say over this next hour. And hope you enjoy it. And off we go. So Emma, please, do you want to give us? You've just alluded to your name being Norwegian. Do you want to give us a little bit more about you? Who is the woman behind this beautiful person on the screen? What are your interests, family? What do you do? Tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm not that terribly interesting, Adi. It's a good question. Who am I? Well, so where do I start? Well, first and foremost, I'm here to serve. So if you look at who I am, if you look at my day job, my professional job, I'm a public servant. So I work for the public service in developing properties, predominantly affordable homes, social housing, or civic buildings. I have a passion about serving the public. And I think if you look at the other half of my life, which is a lot of YMCA stuff, it's very much, serving young people in their communities. And I think, if you were to cut through the middle of me, I think you'd very much see that sort of real focus on servant leadership. And it's something that gives me so much pleasure. I don't feel that my professional job's a toll in any way because I enjoy it. And it's the same with the YMCA. It takes up a lot of time, it takes up a lot of energy and at times emotions. But there's so much pleasure, there's so much fun, there's just so much happiness. And it's great to be part of an amazing family.
So Emma, how did you first get involved in the YMCA? What were your first impressions? Was it the local YMCA? Tell us a little bit about, was it a song and dance at a wedding somewhere? What was your first impression?
So I'm a late comer to the YMCA. I meet so many people that really got involved with the YMCA or joined the YMCA at a young age. And, I do have a degree of envy, really, because when I was young, I kind of grew up through church and through guiding, Brownie guides, Girl guides, Ranger guides. And certainly I grew up in Wales. I wasn't familiar with any YMCAs local to me. I know we have a great YMCA in Cardiff, but I wasn't aware of that growing up, really. And so my interaction initially with the YMCA was, again, in a professional capacity. I was working for a city council in Exeter, in terms of running their housing service. And I was literally approached by the local YMCA to look at joining the board and bringing, I guess, a degree of expertise with regard to housing development, housing management. And so I would have been at that time in my 30s, probably late 30s. I'm not going to give too much away. And literally, I got involved with my local YMCA. And they're a fantastic YMCA that punch well above their weight. But it was kind of the greatest form of introduction because it enabled me to get involved at a very grassroots level, to get a good understanding of what the YMCA really is all about. And that is very much serving young people and communities in different ways to meet the differing needs in the locality that you're placed. And so I do think, and I'm still involved with the YMCA next. I still sit on their board. This is my 4th term. I've done 1 year out, so I conform to all the governance requirements. But I think being grounded at a local level is really, really important. And it's been a great platform for me then to get involved more at a national level, European level, and a global level. But, I'm very much at home with my local YMCA, and that really keeps me in touch with reality and the shifting needs of young people. And I think, you know, you need to remain connected to those young peoples and communities, and ensure that you're relevant, and relevant, you know, year in, year out.
That's really nice to hear. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you view it sometimes, usually getting involved at local level leads to automatically being involved at the national level somehow. What have you done at a national level? Because I presume you didn't just jump from local level straight up to European level. In terms of YMCA England and Wales, what's happened there? Have you been involved there, or any kind of positions or roles that you've done at the national level?
Yeah, so I think, and again, I don't quite know how I ended up. Yeah, I think probably most people in the Y family question how did I ended up doing what I'm doing. And because I'm not really, I'm ambitious for the outcomes of the projects that I'm involved with. For myself personally, I'm not really ambitious. And so I'm not one of these people that will plot, you know, a pathway in terms of where I want to end up. What invariably happens is people just sort of grab you, and I think we're all familiar with this, because you might have particular strengths or talents or expertise. And I think probably my attraction to probably the National Council in England and Wales was obviously my involvement with a local YMCA, but also that I came from a professional background which was very much sort of property based, within housing, and really aligned with kind of what is the bread and butter for lots of YMCAs across England and Wales, which is providing supported accommodation. I mean, we do a load of other stuff, particularly community projects and other sort of social value projects. But I guess where I fitted quite neatly in terms of a board position was because I could bring those unique professional skills. And, you know, often I'm the go-to person on the board when we're talking about housing issues or assets that we have got to deal with, either to dispose of, or, you know, whether we've got maybe issues at a more local level from a property perspective. And so it's really nice to be able to contribute some of my sort of gifts and skills in that regard. So when I first joined the National Board YMCA in Wales, I was involved with their housing committee, and at that time we were divesting most of the housing that we controlled to local YMCAs. And so it's been really great to see that project be completed, and local YMCAs now thrive in terms of managing their property portfolios. And then for the last, I don't know how many years, probably 5 years, I've been vice chair of YMCA England and Wales. And so it's been really great working alongside, well, it'll be now my second chairperson, really, you know, really working alongside them, setting the agenda and assisting them to really take the National Council from strength to strength.
Fantastic. And it's great to just hear already so much that you've done at local and national level. As if that wasn't enough, then came, I guess, the international level of the YMCA. And I remember meeting you in Hintersay. And tell us a little bit about, before becoming the first female president, which we'll come to in a second, you know, a little bit around kind of going up to that international level in kind of and
Yeah.
how that was. And it's a whole different ball game, I think. You'll agree with me when you arrive there. And again, you often ask, how did I end up here? But please, just a little bit about any kind of involvement or interaction with YMCA Europe or the World YMCA before your presidency.
Yeah. I mean, Hintersea for me holds so many memories. It was my first ever experience of YMCA Europe. And I guess, you know, YMCA England and Wales were very keen for me to attend. They were very keen for me to be nominated to be involved as part of the executive committee. And I guess, having never experienced the unique culture, and I have to say, YMCA Europe is unique. And once you're part of it, you absolutely fall in love with it, and you're almost addicted to life, to that organization. But in Hintersea, yes, fascinating, because it gave me really close observation of how YMCA Europe operated. What it clearly showed me was the voice and the determination and the passion of young people, and I hadn't really seen that in the UK. I think, in England and Wales, we're very much are so used to serving, and often we probably don't give enough opportunity for young people to articulate their voices from an organizational perspective. And we do, for certain campaigns and the like. And so coming to YMCA Europe and Hintersea, and being involved with kind of local elections, and being unsuccessful, was really humbling in the first instance. But also, for me, it was really exciting to see that we had really ambitious young people that wanted to take a prominent role and leadership role in governance, and take, YMCA Europe from strength to strength. And so I kind of left Hintersea, at least understanding a lot more about YMCA Europe, but also knowing that it had a real strong relevance for young people across Europe. I hasten to say, I didn't leave Hintersea eager to nominate myself again. Because, to be quite honest, I felt that there was plenty enough able young people that could potentially take the executive committee to the next level. But I really enjoyed the experience, and it was really also good to see some of the projects that were happening in Germany, for example, in terms of, some of the facilities they've got in terms of camp provision, hostel provision, providing outdoor activity. So that was a great insight for me, definitely. In terms of how I ended up being president, well, I think, again, I think this is really important to me, in so much as I never wanted to be president. I wasn't successful in being elected at Hintersea. So when people approached our national movement, then it was during COVID then, but at that time when they were looking for new nominations for the executive committee, I know somebody approached me and said, look, we'd like you to consider standing for president. And I laughed. I just said, well, hold on a minute. I couldn't even get enough support at that time to become an executive committee member. And I just said no. I said, look, no. I just don't think it's right for me. And there was a lot of lobbying going on over several months, and I think ultimately kind of accepting the nomination was very liberating for me, because it was something that I didn't want, and therefore it almost made it easier if you went through elections again and you didn't get it. But what I did say was, look, I don't want it, therefore this isn't about me. This isn't about me putting myself forward for something that I want, because I don't particularly want it, and I've got quite a busy life anyway. But if I'm successful, I'm not somebody who would give just a fraction of myself to the position. You would get me at 110% plus. And, that's led me to 4 years of no social life. A lot of work.
You're not selling it, Emma.
But my goodness, just an incredible 4 years. Incredible 4 years.
And we'll come to that in a second and look at a couple of the massive pieces of work that you've been involved in over the last 4 years during your term as president. And I guess I just want to take a moment to say thank you for shattering the glass ceiling. And I guess for those watching, the reason that that's so important is, in the 50 years that YMCA Europe has existed as an entity, we've only ever had male presidents. There's been 9 presidents in total, and Emma shattered that glass ceiling. Whether you realize it or not, Emma, that's what you did, because quite often we have a saying in English, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And I'm very conscious sometimes of the optics that we have as a YMCA movement. And, with all great respect intended, old white men presenting young women awards and stuff like that. We need to change the optics sometimes. And whether you realize it or not, Emma, there's a powerful image, quick plug here for the anniversary album that you can download in the comments. There's a powerful image of Emma stood there as our president in YMCA Europe on our 50th anniversary event. And for me, it just sums up everything that we should be, could be, and want to be. So I need to say to you on behalf of the movement, thank you, Emma. Whether you realize it or not, somebody has to be the first one through the wall or through the glass ceiling. And sometimes that can be a bit bloody, but it needs doing.
Well, thank you so much. But ultimately, I think we thank those people that nominated me, those people that kind of voted. And ultimately, you're not a leader without followers. And, I think for me, my role is representational. And again, I'm here to serve. So I'm only as effective as those people that are kind of working alongside me. And, the success of YMCA Europe, and particularly as an executive committee, is because we've got some amazing individuals on that executive committee, amazingly young, a membership, and disproportionately a lot of women, and it's just fantastic, so fine, I'm the figurehead, but around me are an amazing executive committee, an amazing staff team in YMCA Europe, and a unique and exceptional general secretary.
Well, that's very, very nice to hear from you, Emma. And when we interviewed Mike, he talked about going into COVID, and I guess it was almost your responsibility as the next president to kind of take us out of COVID, or on the back end of, especially what was across the world. Lockdown was very different in a lot of countries, but the kind of everything that we had built before the pandemic and before COVID had pretty much been smashed. All the partnerships, all the Erasmus, all the meetings. And what was that like coming out of COVID for you as the president, and the kind of the challenges that were there? How are you thinking and feeling? Because it was a difficult time to be president.
It's been a very privileged time to be president, really, in so much as, yes, in our first ever General Assembly, it was when we'd moved on screen, online. And so straight away, one of my biggest challenges was, how do I build relationships? Because, I'm not even visiting people. I'm not seeing people face to face. Our executive committee, we were just meeting virtually. And indeed, over the last 4 years, I think there's only been like 3 or so occasions that we've actually met in person. And so the way that we operated changed, and it changed overnight, really. We had to suddenly enter a new world of hybrid working and hybrid relationships with people. And in many respects, I think that strengthened the European movement, because we found that we could deliver more of our programs, we could deliver more events by doing some of it online. And then obviously when we were able to then do the in-person opportunity, events and the like. So I think initially it was quite difficult to kind of pick up pace in terms of building those relationships. And then, of course, very quickly within my, the first year of my term or so, we had the conflict in Ukraine. And so I kind of, and when I inherited the role, we were in, it's fair to say, quite a precarious financial situation. We were still managing some of the debts, which we still do, from the highly successful Y175 event in London, which, absolutely was the right investment, and certainly have created memories and experiences for young people that, were well worth the kind of more challenging budget position that it put YMCA Europe. But obviously then when the conflict in Ukraine came about, and it came about relatively swiftly, we'd been in dialogue with our colleagues in Belarus, in Ukraine and in Russia. but all of a sudden things moved swiftly, and YMCA Europe really had to act up, and it had to really react to a very fast-paced changing situation. And so for me, it was a privilege to very quickly develop very deep relationships with some of the real leaders within Europe that then helped us to initiate a response to the conflict. So we had national secretaries in all the European countries neighboring Ukraine, actively, at the borders, assisting people to get out of the country. As a European region, without hesitation, national movements jumped up to say, what can we do to help? Can we physically accommodate refugees or displaced persons coming out of Ukraine? We activated a fundraising campaign, and literally overnight, we saw the generosity and the care of not just YMCA Europe, but the global movement. And that completely then put YMCA Europe into a different driving seat. All of a sudden, I guess our profile raised, and we were responsible for administering a major program of resettlement, of providing help and support, and longer term programs for not just our YMCA family in Ukraine, but the communities and the young people associated. And so that's been the bedrock, I would say, of my presidency. And in between all of that, we've had to maintain a degree of business as usual, but also, deliver a new strategy aligned to Vision 2030, and also seek to look at ways in which we can modernise our organisation. So 4 years has been a whirlwind. I don't know where the time's gone. I guess on paper we've probably achieved a lot, but I think when you're in the storm of doing stuff, you don't really recognise what you've achieved. And if you ask me, well, there's so much more to do, and that in part is kind of feeding my willingness to want to stand for another term, because it's almost as if, well, we've just done the warm-up now, we've just instigating some projects, some initiatives, and I think we can make a real difference now over the next 4-year term.
I mean, it's amazing, and I think we'll make sure the link is in the comment section for the relief work and the response to Ukraine, which is absolutely amazing, and absolutely right, Emma, that in itself has been transformational for the European alliance. But let's just switch a little bit and go to, it wasn't all doom and gloom, and the work was fantastic, but also there was the pressure of having the first in-person event after COVID as well, as I understand it, and that was going to be an anniversary, but instead of looking at the past, looking forward at the next kind of 50, 100 years, and that was in Berlin. I think that was the Y Together event in Berlin, and that was, again, probably the big event for you as president, and to bring together not just people from Europe, but around the world came. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how that was? And I'm sure people who went have very fond memories, but that is the kind of standout event, I guess, of your first presidency.
Yeah, I know, absolutely, because we were really mindful, certainly after the Y175 event in London, young people want to get together. They love it, when they all come to one location and they can spend time together, build their relationships, experience the very sort of essence of YMCA, and create lifetime memories, but also friendships and relationships. For us, post-COVID, we had to really temper our ambitions. We didn't have a lot of money. The money that we did have was, very much focused on, assisting the efforts for Ukraine. But we felt it was really important to mark the 50th anniversary of YMCA Europe, and to use it probably more as an excuse to maybe, bring together a scale down you know, gathering of young people from across Europe and beyond. Berlin was an important venue in terms of a location for us, very much sort of being in the sort of crossroads of Europe, and, you know, a country that has witnessed, you know, great change during the lifetime of our organization. And, you know, Germany were fabulous hosts. And indeed, the German government subsidized the event quite considerably. So it was an important event, not just for marking the 50th anniversary and looking back in terms of what we achieved, but I think for me, it was a platform to get us all thinking about our future. And really trying to open up more opportunities where we can engage with young people and, I guess, serve their ambitions for the future, making sure that we continue to be relevant, that we continue to provide the programs, the activities, the initiatives that young people want. Because I think often, you know, organizations can get so sort of big and sheltered, you know, from a headquarters perspective, that we can lose that sense of close relationship with young people and understanding what their needs are. So for me, Berlin was an opportunity to speak with young people, to meet with young people, for them to start shaping the agenda of what was important for them, and also for them to endorse our new strategy going forward, which was really to reflect their needs over the next 4 years, 4 to 5 years.
Super. And I guess, as you were saying, the Y Together event, but also the Ukraine response, it started, I guess, the YMCA Europe down different paths that perhaps it hasn't gone down before. And you alluded to earlier, kind of meeting online and a better kind of technology or digital based approach to things. There seems to be a lot when you watch the Facebook or the social media from YMCA Europe. There seems to be a lot now in terms of digital work, and it looks like that knock-on effect from the pandemic has carried on to actually serve exactly what you're saying, young people. And how important has that been for you, and how proud are you of that work in terms of kind of, I guess, the work in Moldova, the West Balkans, the refugee hubs, the games that have been, the digital game for education that's been produced. That work has kind of come out of nowhere, but I guess in response to just the situation, which again, the YMCA always responds to what's going on in the world. So maybe you could just share a little bit about that for whenever people are watching this, they might be sat in a hub or have done a course with the YMCA. So it'd be good to hear from you
Yeah,
a
I
little bit
mean,
about that.
you know, the thing is, you know, life is changing at a pace, you know, and the YMCA, you know, it came out of kind of a Victorian invention. It's, you know, 100 and nearly 180 years old, and it's I guess one of its strengths has been it's always been able to change, it's always been able to adapt, it's always been able to reflect and serve the needs of generations at the time it existed. You know, and we saw this, you know, back in, you know, World War One, you know, World War Two, World War One, World War Two. We saw it in terms of the conflict in the West Balkans. We saw it more recently in Ukraine. You know, we're seeing it flex and meet the needs of young people. And I think, you know, digitalization is just part of that journey. And, you know, the digitalization projects, you know, a lot of that's coming from what existing national movements are doing or involved with. You know, YMCA Europe, we're just an umbrella organization. You know, we are here to serve the national movements. But part of that is enabling, facilitating European-wide projects. And so often it will be, you know, even local YMCAs, let alone national movements, that will come to us with initiatives that are proving to be really successful. You know, we've seen that, you know, in Kosovo, we've seen that in Scotland. And part of our role is to say, look, how can we take this magic and increase it so it's more accessible to more young people and it can have greater impact? What we have been doing, particularly alongside the World Alliance over the last 2 to 3 years, as an indirect consequence, I think, of the response that we've given to the conflict in Ukraine has been the development of greater partnership working. So, you know, the partnership work we've done more recently with HP has had a real catalyst for us to really provide greater digital projects to a wider number of young people, and it's had much greater impact. And I think, you know, the direction of travel in the future will be far greater collaboration, far greater co-creation between national movements or even local YMCAs, between area alliances and the global YMCA, and I think a much more agile and nimble way of working, where we will just take the good things and the successful things and see how transferable they are within our own communities.
Fantastic. And I love that when you said take the magic. And I think that's exactly how a lot of people feel the YMCA is, or what the YMCA produces. So I would absolutely agree with you. Let's change gear a little bit and maybe give people a little bit of behind the scenes, because I think you're talking about some wonderful projects and some wonderful gatherings, but it is a lot of hard work. And I think at an executive level, and you and your colleagues in the executive committee, you've been working really hard in terms of regular meetings, some of the activities that you're doing. And I think that's as a team, but under your leadership, what's happened in recent years in terms of, I mean, there's this old kind of image that when you say YMCA globally, that is like some old men sat in a room smoking every quarter. What need pass me the checks, I'll sign them. That was the old kind of school governance, but it's not fit for purpose anymore. And I know that you've done some pretty much some transformational things that are just like people to hear about, in terms of, not everybody can be in the Disney parade. Some people have to time it and work out who's going in the
Oh yeah,
costumes. So
I really like that analogy. Yeah, I mean, for YMCA to be as successful as it is, and for it to continue, then yeah, there's a lot of backroom functions. The whole sort of governance is really, really important. Well, it's critical. And often we just see, like you say, all the fancy stuff, all the fun stuff, but that doesn't happen without setting budgets, managing budgets, securing finance, and ensuring there's the right sort of policies and procedures in place. And so something that I've been really keen to do over the last 4 years is working with Juan, our General Secretary, and his fantastic staff team to really kind of reinforce the foundations of YMCA Europe, so that they're really kind of strong and robust, and they're a platform on which we can grow, and also grow the YMCA movement across Europe, because we've got new YMCAs that are now opening reopening in the case of Poland, but opening in Cyprus. We've got a need for greater movement strengthening, because the impact of COVID has had a substantial impact on some national movements, and we need to ensure that we've got the resources to help strengthen those. So part of my remit, I suppose, has been to work with Juan to lead on the leadership of firming up those foundations, for ensuring that we've got an established base out of Brussels. And now we're seeing closer relationships with the EU Parliament. And indeed, we've got ambitions that will build more longer term and financially secure projects that we can deliver then across the whole of Europe. The executive committee are just exceptional. I mean, I have got so much love and respect for them. And, they're a relatively young executive team. All of them are, working. And at the same time, they are attending, we have executive meetings every month on Saturday mornings, and and they've missed out, certainly during COVID, those opportunities to travel, to meet, to be, I guess some of what would perceive were the perks of being on executive committee, but they have dedicated themselves to really help build the governance, build those foundational activities, and really put YMCA Europe now in a place where we can really up our growth agenda.
And I guess one piece of work that I know that you're working on is revisiting the Constitution. So, of course, this is a heritage interview, and it will not surprise anybody to understand that the original Constitution was not even written; was just kind of transferred across from some old committees that we had in the World Alliance. But that's something you and I guess a team of people at the European level are revisiting. And again, I guess just making sure we're fit for purpose and are we more agile moving forward? I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but
No,
yeah.
absolutely, Adi. You know, so we are rewriting the Constitution, but we're going to be guided by our members. So we've started some initial work. And what we've done is we've basically put the existing Constitution to one side. We've not tried to tweak it. We've not tried to modify it. We've just said, look, let's take a blank piece of paper. If we were establishing YMCA Europe today, what sort of constitution would we need to be fit for purpose and relevant? And what we'll be doing is bringing to our General Assembly in Athens is the initial framework for the Constitution, but we will be undertaking a series of conversations across Europe with people that are involved with the YMCA, people that are provided with the services from YMCA, to really get their input in terms of what they see to be the sort of the components of the Constitution. I would envisage it's going to take us probably 12 months, but we will do it as an incremental process. Ensuring that people can contribute towards it, but also, you know, taking kind of almost rain checks with people to ensure that we're getting it in the right direction to ultimately get it adopted, probably within the next 12 months. I think it's really important. Because of the pace of change in Europe, because of the change in the way that we need to work in terms of greater partnerships and collaboration, we need to ensure that we've just got a constitution that gives us the freedom and gives us the kind of governance framework and the flexibility to actually go ahead and achieve a lot more.
So if you're watching this, I don't know when you're watching it, but that might have already happened. But and if you're watching this on our 100th anniversary, you're also welcome. So Emma, talk a little bit about one thing that stuck out when we were looking at the history of the European alliances. We were always on a borrow or always on a beg for additional funds. And I think even there's some great documents from the early 70s and 80s about, you know, standing up in front of the assembly and just asking and we need help and rousing speeches that did the job and got us to where we are today. But just talk to us about obviously the crisis in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, and the response and the partnerships work and everything you've been talking about. That has changed YMCA Europe. We're no longer talking about hundreds of thousands. We're talking about millions. How's that transition been as a movement that have gone from, you know, 500,000 to millions? How's that strain been on the executive, on the staff team? Has it been easy? You know, there are points in history where we can look back, and we will pinpoint these years, I guess, at the 100th anniversary, whoever's around, not me and you maybe. But we will look and say that was a turning point there. Talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah, do you know, it gives you some idea, I guess, of how little I knew about YMCA when I first became president, because I always remember going through sort of the budgets with Juan and I think we were looking at the end of year finances. And, you know, my professional career is in property development. So, you know, we'll be dealing with the millions and billions. And I remember reading the account sheet and I think, you know, we were struggling to get a balanced budget, you know, and I was assuming everything was in thousands. And I think the kind of the remains of what was left in our account on the first year that I joined was something like, I don't know, I think it was something like 26 euros. But I'd assumed everything was thousands. So I was like thinking, oh, it's 26,000. That's not too bad. And like Juan was like, no, it's 26 euros. And so for me, it was quite a challenge to get my head round kind of being responsible for an organization that was achieving just immense things, even at that time, on such a shoestring budget. I couldn't believe how these things were being achieved. Of course, I know now because, you know, there is that YMCA Europe magic where volunteers have just got this incredible energy and passion and drive that kind of injects so much value in the organization. So I understand that now. But then leapfrogging forwards where, you know, we initiated a massive fundraising campaign for Ukraine, and all of a sudden we were attracting, you know, amazing, and generous donations from across the globe. And then, you know, having to be custodians of that and ensuring that that was well invested, not just in the short term, but in the longer term. Yeah, it was a challenge. But to be quite frank, you know, the YMCA kind of finance team, YMCA Europe finance team, they're hugely capable. And to be quite honest, because they're all kind of, I would call them sort of lifers in the movement, they just took it in their stride. You know, they absolutely control every single euro as if it's their own. And, you know, all the governance and the checks and balances that were in place when we literally had just a few euros in the bank would just apply to us having, you know, hundreds and thousands of pounds in the bank. And I would say it's just as difficult now for us to spend money in terms of the governance that's in place through our finance team as it was when we had literally no money. But I think that's really good because, you know, we have all the checks and balances, and we're custodians. We need to ensure that, you know, we invest wisely, and that we manage our finances in a way that we can continue to be sustainable. Now, looking to the future, I think sustainability will continue to be a challenge, and we need to ensure, particularly perhaps alongside the George Williams Fund, that we create, I guess, much more of a sinking fund, so that, you know, heaven forbid there's a next sort of Ukraine conflict or the equivalent, we can actually be even faster in reacting because we've got financial proceeds to do that. So, you know, I don't think we'll ever stop asking. I don't think we'll ever have enough money to do what we want to do. But I think our mindset is shifting more to financial sustainability, partnerships, and also really measuring the outputs and the outcomes of the projects that are being delivered across Europe. I mean, the value from the projects that, you know, local YMCAs are running, national movements are running, is absolutely phenomenal. So we know that, you know, there's sound investments.
And I mean, you mentioned it earlier that there's an extra push now in Brussels. And I think during your time as president, there's been an increase in kind of staff there. And the seat of YMCA Europe has moved around. And now it is in Brussels. But now it's like, it's not just partly in Brussels, maybe in the past. If you go back and watch Mike's interview, you know, that was a big step. But now there's a real push to be there in Brussels and to have more staff, more collaboration. I guess coming up to the end of your presidency, you're quite happy with where we are today in Brussels in terms of that increased staff capacity and reputation and all the things that come with it hand in hand. You've said it already, so we don't need to spend too long on that. But any final comments around the Brussels kind of, I don't want to call it project, but the seat of YMCA Europe being in Brussels?
Yeah, I think that was really important, and I think it's a real credit to Mike and his executive committee team for really spearheading and making that happen. I know from even Ed Eggin's day, it was something that, you know, he was keen to see initiated. It's important that we're in Brussels. It is the seat of Europe. And I think, you know, our relationship with the institutions that are in Brussels are becoming increasingly important. And I think this will have a wider resonance, really, as we work more collaboratively, perhaps with the World YMCA. who are literally, only in Geneva up the road. So again, there is potential already. We've got some shared positions, part funded from YMCA Europe as well as the World Alliance. So I think that's something that increasingly we'll be looking at doing more of. So making kind of the administration of our movement a lot more cost effective. And we want to grow the team. So, we're currently looking for a chief operating officer that's going to really help assist us in terms of developing the operations of YMCA across Europe. And I think, that will be part of the expansion of YMCA Europe. But I've got to be careful here because, at the end of the day, we're not growing an empire. We're here as an umbrella organization. So we want to just ensure that we can fulfill our purpose with the right size team, and increasingly looking at how we can utilize our teams based in Brussels to be of direct benefit for national movements across Europe. And I think, again, we could well see greater collaboration. I'd like to see more secondments, perhaps from people that are operating at a national movement level, maybe to come within the YMCA Europe office to get their own personal experience and career development, and to really have that flexibility so that when things change in Europe, when events happen, we've got a tighter network of leaders that can pull together that then can respond.
Emma, thanks for sharing that whole section a little bit behind the scenes. I think quite often we just presume things happen, but there's a lot of hard work, and you just kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit certainly helps us. Whenever you're watching this, could be in the future, you might say, oh, that Brussels project didn't work. I'm sure it will. But whenever you're watching this, really just appreciate you sharing a little bit about the building blocks. And as you alluded to, building on previous administrations and previous ideas, but all heading the same way. I think you said it best. I'm not sure how we do things in the YMCA, but it is the people. And I'd just like us to kind of close out this by maybe giving you some space to talk about people who've been significant in your journey or in your kind of, I don't know, work over the years. But this is something that we've done with all these heritage interviews is I always say that it is the YMCA is not climbing walls or camps. Well, those things are important. It is the people that get things done. And as you've articulated, YMCA Europe certainly wouldn't be where it was 50 years later without the goodwill and volunteers of so many people across the continent and beyond. But Emma, who was significant in your personal YMCA journey over the years? Was there anybody that you'd like to mention or shout out?
Well, I that's a difficult one because the YMCA has so many amazing people, and so many of them are incredibly inspirational of all ages. So I think the one thing that has been constant for me, and I think has given me the continued passion and probably energy, has probably been my faith, and really having God travel alongside me on the journey. I mean, for me, the YMCA is very much an opportunity for me to live out my faith. And so, we talked about Berlin in last summer. I mean, Berlin for me was it was a crossroads, not just for YMCA Europe, it was a crossroads for myself personally. Literally 2 days before I went to Berlin, I had a diagnosis of cancer, and there was so much uncertainty in my life at that time. Again, you're committed to this amazing event, so certainly wasn't going to miss it. But I knew when I was at that event, I didn't know, well, how long have I got to live? What's my prognosis? And since then, and again, I've been stuck to sort of online appearances and the like whilst I went through intensive treatment. Not only has God been by my side, but the whole YMCA family as well. And so I do feel that my faith has been really significant. And if I was to pick out individuals. I suppose on a more local level in terms of YMCA Europe, you know, we had Peter Posner, who was a former YMCA Europe president. Obviously, I knew him from YMCA England and Wales. I think, you know, when I met him and having kept in touch with him, he's a real role model. And I think he exemplifies many of the fine qualities of the movement. Denise Hatton, who is the National General Secretary for England and Wales. I mean, she was, you know, the lady that got me in this mess. You know, she was the one that kind of encouraged me to go through the door. And, you know, and I'm extremely thankful for her. But again, a real fantastic servant leader who's committed her working life to the movement. And so extremely inspirational to me. I guess looking at it from a female perspective, and you talked about the importance of, you know, seeing role models. I was, you know, really privileged to see Patricia Pelton become the first world female president. That was, I think, a real game changer. And of course, now we've got Sahelia, who's followed her up as the second female world president. And both of them are exceptional individuals. And, you know, without a shadow of doubt, they don't just inspire me, but I know they inspire lots of young people. And I think that's really important. My closest working companions are obviously Juan, who's the General Secretary for YMCA Europe. He's a pleasure to work with. For those of you that know Juan, he's the consummate diplomat. I don't think he ever says no to anybody. But, you know, an absolute delight to work with. And great, he has a fantastic staff team who are just amazing. And of course, we've got this amazing executive committee. So there are so many people that make my job really easy, but also make every day that I do YMCA work, and I say work, it's not work, YMCA stuff, just a pleasure. And, you know, just meeting every young person that we have the privilege to serve, it gives you immense energy, gives you immense sort of renewal. And I think, you know, from Berlin, where, you know, I thought I didn't know where my life was heading, you know, just being around young people, just seeing what the umbrella organization YMCA Europe could achieve, just makes it very easy to commit all your spare time and energy to.
So Emma, before I ask you to finish with a story or a special memory from the last kind of 4 years as your president, I just want to say on behalf of the movement, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for shattering those glass ceilings. And you mentioned, you know, people like Patricia, who significantly became president of the World Movement, but also from a YMCA Europe perspective and in our relatively short history, you know, you yourself are that symbol to so many young women, young volunteers, staff women in our movement. So I think you're sharing your personal story with us. You're sharing a little bit behind the curtain. I would just say to you, thank you so much for being an inspiration. Thank you so much for your leadership. Quite often in the movement, we forget to say thank you, but let me say on behalf of the movement, thank you. And I'll pass over to you to finish. So if you're trying to reach that button to turn this interview off, just hold on for another 2 minutes while I ask Emma to share a special story or memory from the last 4 years that will lead us out of this interview.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many, but I think for me, what resonates the most is, you know, and I thank Andy and Marius from our YMCA staff team, is how they've been able to communicate via videos, via social media, the stories behind the individuals whose lives have been impacted by YMCA. And it's not the impacts of what we've done as YMCA Europe, but the impact that local YMCAs have had. That, you know, that can't help but live with you and sit on your heart. And, you know, every time I see those videos, it could be the response to displaced people coming out of Ukraine, the camps that we've been holding in terms of our Bread for Peace program, the work that we're doing in terms of digital advancement, mental health projects. I mean, the list is endless. For me, you only have to look at the faces to hear the feedback from those young people, and anyone would dedicate their lives to doing whatever's possible to make the difference to those people. Now, I'm privileged enough, I've made it to 50 just. Hopefully I can make it to another 50. Even if I don't, I know that, being part of this movement and making such a difference to many young people's lives and their communities just gives me constant special memories. And if, heaven forbid, I go under a bus tomorrow, I would die happy, knowing that we've got a global movement that will continue, with amazing people that will enable it to continue, and young people that will come into the movement having been touched by it and will continue its prosperity going forward. So lifetimes of memories, and I'm sure, lifetime more to come.
Emma Osmundsen, thank you so much. And we don't say goodbye in the YMCA, we say see you later. Thank you for spending this hour with us. And if you've been interested or intrigued by Emma's interview, make sure to check out the other interviews in the Heritage series. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you are in the world, whenever you're watching, and whatever you're doing. Take care.
Thanks, Adi.